Hello, introverts and extroverts. This video is going to be a very, very long one. If you're new here, this isn't the type of video that I usually make, nor the editing style that I typically use. That is because I am making this video as quickly as possible. My finals have ended a few days ago, and I want to address this publicly before this person continues causing issues for me and my community. Now, I have what I think is a very open and welcoming fan base. However, with any community, there's going to be some problematic people, and I'd like to talk about one of those people today. Usually I wouldn't be doing this, but this man has continuously caused issues even months after banning him. Please do take a moment to read the on-screen warnings. Please don't harass anyone in this video. All the names are either replaced, censored, or the person had provided their consent to use their name in this video. Make sure you do what this last slide says. Please watch the whole thing before commenting, just so that you're fully informed and can make your own opinion on the situation. With that out of the way, let's hop into it, shall we? I'll be going over every inch of the timeline, giving my thoughts and counterpoints along the way. I will warn you, it is very long and it flops back and forth because this person repeats himself quite frequently. Hal Stewart is a villain from the 2010 film Megamind. This character was ahead of its time, representing the term nice guy before it had become widely used. The term nice guy represents a man who is only nice to a woman to get into a relationship with them, whether that be romantic or sexual. When that woman rejects the nice guy's advances for whatever reason, the guy then shows his true colors by becoming aggressive verbally or physically. So as you can see, nice guys aren't actually nice. They feign niceness in order to get something out of the situation. Which is why some men, not all, I said some, think that women just being nice to them means that they want to date. Just because that's the only time that they themselves are nice to women. Anyways, back to why I'm talking about Megamind. The fan I'm discussing today's fake name will be Hal, and I'll start calling him Titan as time goes on, much like the character's own nice guy arc in the film.
Who is this man we've infused with godlike power?
Hal had joined my Discord server when we opened up to the public for a free week in December 2024. Everything seemed alright at first. Hal would ping me quite a bit to ask me questions, not enough for me to say anything about it, but definitely enough that people were noticing how much he'd tag me in conversations I wasn't even a part of. Now, I heavily dislike 3D modeling. I've done it for 5 years for college, and the last semester would have been my final year having to do it. Which hopefully I passed, which I did by the time I'm recording this audio. I decided to ask my server if anyone was well-versed in Blender. My college had us use Maya the years prior, but this specific professor wanted us to use Blender, so I felt lost on top of already disliking the medium. Okay, how about this? It's to that point where I'm like, I can't do this. Then let me help you, please! You can't build the dice for me. I know I may not be able to build them for you, but I can teach you if you would like. I have the videos to teach me. It's mostly just motivation to go to my computer and suffer for more than 4 hours. I get angry just looking at Maya and Blender because it's so frustrating. True! Just know that if needed, I can help you with both programs. Then I waste several wasted hours when I could have just worked on other assignments. I'll respect that you wish to conquer this task on your own, but just ask me. You're not a burden. I like to help people with stuff too, again, if needed. Yeah, thank you. I mean, he could help you along so it takes less time. Thank you. It's just, I wish my texture actually worked on that assignment and any future assignments. I understand. If you need any help with textures, just ping me up, and I can help you out. I'll probably need to for this next assignment. I just need to build the item first, and I don't want to do that. The video that the teacher sent us to build the item is almost 4 hours long. That means it's gonna take me days. It takes me days on a 30-minute video. I absolutely understand. He offered his help to me willingly, and I brought the conversation to DMs to talk with him about my first assignment to see if he could help me. For context, he had asked in the server if I could send the videos that the teacher made, and this is how the DMs continued. I would. The only problem is that you'd know where I go to college, and I can't take that risk. Fair! I hate that they made it that YouTube's account's username, lol. True, lol. Well, what type of class are you trying to take right now? That type of class is universal, so I don't think it would reveal where you are. Also, let's be real here. I would never ever try that shit, and if I do, please feel free to block me. It's a 3D application class that I need to graduate my course. True! You've also said that Maya and Blender are involved, and that you needed to create dice, correct? Yeah. Okay, good. 6 D&D dice. Alright. D4, D6, D8, D10, D12, and a D20. Damn, that's a lot of dice. But it's all good. I need to also make a custom texture for each one. And specifically, the D6 needs to have rounded corners because God forbid we just use a cube. Okay, so the D6 needs to be beveled. Yeah, I just need the motivation to do it, but even just thinking about it is draining, especially knowing the video tutorials are 4 hours long. Usually for these assignments, it's like a 2-hour video. Alright, I also understand that it's draining, but I have a plan cooked up. Would you be open to hearing it or nah? And I never used Adobe Substance 3D, which is what we need to paint the textures. Sure, what's up? Okay, so I think Discord has a call feature and sharing option via this messaging thing. Again, the only reason I'm suggesting this is so that I can show you what I would do via Blender. You can, of course, feel free to not speak or do anything as well if that helps. I personally think it would be a better process overall of showing you how it would be done, versus just telling you, because then what would be the difference between that and the video? This would only be for the 3D part, and I will respect your wishes if you don't wish to proceed further than this. What do you think of this plan? Do you think it'll be faster than 4 hours, lol? Oh, absolutely! And will it have the stuff I need to make sure that the UVs are good for painting? Yes, and I will show you everything required, including UVs and textures. Okay, sure. Is tomorrow afternoon okay? Of course! My class has a Discord, and this is some of what the other students are posting. In the meantime, I'll do some studying of my own to know what bevel patterns they have used. Thank you. I really appreciate it. You're welcome, Miss Cartoonist. I'm glad I can help you. 3D has never been good to me. I'm okay at Maya if I know what I'm doing, but I know nothing about Blender, let alone getting the textures to actually work. And that's okay. Be well today. And it's okay to be stressed too. You're human, but you are also awesome. Thank you. I appreciate it. Anything to help me save time. I have like 5 other assignments I need to focus on too. Fair! I also have a lot to do as well, but that's not due until later, so I should be good. Okay. Thank you for taking the time to help me. Of course! Be well! You too. Here's some more I found on the teacher's Discord.
You worked hard to cross that finish line. Now it's time to celebrate those memories. At Michael's, we help you preserve your key.
Just looking at that makes me nervous. Don't be nervous. With time, you'll master this stuff. I'm excited for tomorrow as well. Be fantastic today, my friend. My dishwasher broke today, but they're repairing it tomorrow morning, so I should still be fine. Damn! If we can get it all done by tomorrow, that would be a dream. I'm sorry about that, but yes, I will make your dreams come true, lol. At least as far as modeling and getting the UVs done. I know the painting thing is on me. Understood! I will teach you how I would place the UVs if needed as well. But I also hope that your dishwasher is fixed. I remember I didn't have a dishwasher for 2 years, lol. Shit sucked ass. I don't even know what happened. My little sister just said that the dishwasher was leaking. The dishwasher was flooded and the water isn't draining out. Gotcha! It still hasn't. It could be a faulty pipe. But I'm glad they're showing up as soon as possible. Indeed! Common dishwasher technician / plumber W. I got this shit on lock, by the way. Here's a preview. But besides that, get some rest tonight, and I am always thankful to talk with you. Hey, I forgot to mention this, but when is noon for you, if I may ask? I only ask this because my time might be different than yours. In an hour and 10 minutes. Does 2 p.m. work for you? So, in about 3 hours and 10 minutes. Sure thing! Be amazing today, homie! Thank you so much again. It'll be nice to get this project done faster than I thought I could, lol. True, lol. You're welcome, by the way. I'm always here. I'm also just glad that you'll be less stressed, too. I don't like seeing others in pain. If you need anything from me, just let me know. If I can repay you for helping me in my 3D class, I'll do it. And if I pass, I never have to take a 3D course ever again, lol. That's good! And you don't have to repay me. Just helping you out is enough. In case I need your help again, here's an idea of the assignments I have coming up. Thank you so much! Talk to you soon. Will do! Give me a bit to get set up, and then I'll be ready. Alright, ready when you are. I'll call on my iPad so that I can follow along with what you're doing, I just won't be able to share my screen. Indeed, I'm ready too!
It may take months for you to come to grips.
No freaking way!
I wasn't finished!
I'm gonna be a hero! I'm gonna be a hero!
Let me talk to you for a moment about this call, since neither of us have any proof about what went on during it. I'll just state what I recall happening and my state of mind during. Please take it with a grain of salt. I join in, my camera was off, obviously. However, his was on, showing him in his room, which I thought was a bit odd considering that mine was off. He apologized for the state of his room and the state of himself. Then he starts praising and complimenting me, which again I thought was really odd, and I started getting uncomfortable. I figured maybe it was just the awkward starstruck vibes from him, or me just not being used to that. So I just noted in my head to myself that if it gets close to 2:30 p.m. and we don't really get anywhere, that I will just leave and do the work myself. Now, this point is important. Hal likes to state that our call lasted 16 minutes exactly, as you can see here. However, he neglects the fact that mid-call I had technical difficulties, leading us to continue the call shortly after. I later claimed that it was 30 minutes just because of what I said earlier about waiting till close to 2:30, but I can confidently state that we were both wrong and the total length of our call was at least 21 minutes. However, it really felt like forever. The rest of our call was him struggling to do the basics and me following along, not being too successful because he wasn't doing it the way the teacher's expecting me to do it. I decided to find a polite excuse to leave in order to not hurt his feelings. After all, this person is taking the time to help me regardless if he actually helped or not. I'm one for treating everyone with respect until they do something to no longer deserve it. Afterwards, I continue talking about the assignment, mostly so that he would feel like he actually helped, even though he really didn't. I honestly deleted what we did in call and restarted. Gotcha! This is for Blender, right? Yeah. Okay. Interesting. The teacher hasn't answered me yet, and this 3D assignment keeps ticking me off. If you're wondering why I'm reading so much of this, it helps, fill time between showing the screenshots, and also, I want to put out as much information that I can, because later on, Hal starts accusing me of things, and, particularly here, one of his friends accuses me of leading him on, so I'm just showing that this is strictly friendly, and I'm not leading him on in any way. Someone in the server had asked me what TV show world I would like to visit. I said the Owl House and made a reference to this audio.
There's no place like... I want to be a witch!
Hal took that joke seriously and offered to teach me witchcraft in DMs, which made me a tiny bit uneasy, but again, I thought it was just me being paranoid. Yo! If you want me to give you some methods on witchcraft, I got you, homie! I've learned some stuff from the lesser and greater keys of Solomon. Just tell me who you want to summon, and I'll tell you how to summon them. I meant more like if I were to live in the universe of the Owl House. Oh, sorry about that. But yeah, if you want that, then just ping me, and your luck will increase tenfold for real. Anyways, what have you learned in class?
Whatever. You should come over. I got a DJ, rented a bouncy house, made a gallon of dip. It's gonna be sick.
Oh, I don't know, Hal. I don't really feel like being around a bunch of people.
No, that's the best part. It'll just be like you and me.
On the same day, he asked this in the server. Cartoonist, would you consider me to be a friend or nah? Hey, what the fuck is that? Alright, I guess we're going for the fucking clone high JFK voice for that guy. Anyways. Hey, the fuck type of question is that? Bro, what? I wasn't even trying to be sus. I was just asking. And, that's fine, but it's just so random. I don't like your funny words, Magic Man. I don't know most people in the server well enough to personally consider them friends. Plus, in general, it takes a lot of trust for me to consider someone to be my friend. Fair, honestly. I'm sorry if that was a very forward question. Now, that's where he starts getting very parasocial towards me. If you don't know what parasocial relationships are, it is a one-sided relationship with a celebrity or fictional character. Because for all celebrities, even though I don't consider myself one, I'm technically grouped up in this category. You guys know a lot about me, and it's impossible for me to know much about any of you, because there's 80,000 of you. Understandable, right? So this leads to a power imbalance and for parasocial relationships to form. Because you can feel feelings towards me, but I can't physically feel anything towards you other than just appreciation that you are part of my audience, kind of thing. You get it, right?
Before I was preventing migraine with Qulipta, it was hard keeping plans. Now I consider volunteering more often. Guess who signed up to chaperone your field trip?
They were all like crying and stuff.
Wow, a brave one, isn't he?
Who are you?
Oh, this is Bernard. He's my partner.
Partner?
Yes, partner.
Well, look, partner. I'm her partner. She doesn't know what she's saying.
A quick reminder that I'm in a poly relationship, so I have my boyfriend, Atlas, and my girlfriend, Aqua, where we're all dating each other. I get asked, like, every single video if I'm in a poly relationship. The answer is yes. Anyways, the next day, Hal had a conversation with my boyfriend in the server and brought up, what if someone guns down Aqua, not knowing that Atlas had watched his late wife die when someone attacked both of them. Hal left the server out of embarrassment.
My sister broke the one rule. I had and almost unalived my family, then showed up at dinner with a glass of wine. When I asked why she won't stop, she said, "He's still breathing, isn't he?" That was 10 months ago. Today, she was screaming my name through the Ring camera, begging me to stop. My sister and I have always had an okay at best relationship. We never talked, but we never fought either. We never shared clothes, never talked about boys, never did anything like that. Whenever it was just us two, the air was filled with awkward silence, which neither of us cared enough to break. But that all changed when she turned 21, because the second she took her first sip of beer, everything changed. She went from drinking monthly, to weekly, to daily. It felt crushing seeing her delve deeper and deeper, and what was even worse was when she tried to drag me down with her. I never liked alcohol and wanted to stay away from it, but she bullied and coerced me into it. On her 22nd birthday, she gave me a bottle of water that was actually straight vodka, and when I spat it out and started coughing, I looked up to see her recording my reaction and laughing. I gave her one final chance after that. I told her if she tried to drag me into drinking again, I would cut her off. Well, a month later, it was her and her boyfriend's anniversary. They invited me out with them, and my sister promised not to ask me to drink with her. Of course, she lied. Throughout the whole night, she kept giving me extremely diluted drinks that I didn't even realize had alcohol in them. Some vodka, whiskey, even rum. I remember feeling a light buzz after my third drink and the world started spinning. This was the first time I was intoxicated. I clung to her asking what was wrong with me, but she just laughed and because she was tipsy herself, admitted what she had done. I don't remember the specifics. All I remember is being enraged. I called a cab on the spot, and once home I sent her a voice note telling her I never want to see her again. What's even more insane is that she called me a week later, blaming me for ruining her party, because everyone looked at her like she was an eye-hole after finding out why I left. I didn't even respond, just hung up. Life went on without her. I soon met the love of my life. We got engaged, got married. My sister wasn't invited, never even attempted to reach out. But then, coincidentally, when I was pregnant, she sent me a message. She said she saw my Facebook post about having a baby with my husband on one of her friends' accounts, and seeing it made her realize nothing is more important than family. She apologized and begged for another chance. I was very reluctant, but eventually agreed. We met up for coffee at a little brunch spot, and even though she was nice and apologetic, she still had 3 glasses of wine, which let me know she was still drinking regularly. I asked about it, and she said alcohol was a part of her life she wishes to give up. But she did promise that if let her back into my life, she'd never drag me into drinking again. I thought long and hard about it, and I agreed. I wasn't sure what to expect, but everything actually went fine. She respected my boundaries, never asked me to drink, and never got more than tipsy in front of me. But then last week she came over to my house, and that was when I realized resuming contact with her was the worst thing I could have done. This was the first time I'd let her come over after my baby's birth. I had warned her that she wasn't allowed to go near the baby if she drank, and she told me that was no problem. I still had a bad gut feeling about it, but the last year gave me good reason to trust her, so I pushed my worries away. But then she came over with 2 bottles of wine. We all had a pleasant chat, and even my husband had a glass. I, however, did not drink. My sister almost finished the 2 entire bottles herself and was quite hammered. Still, the evening was going okay, but then she asked to use the bathroom. I pointed her upstairs, and
This concealer is unlike the rest. It is the Do-It-All Concealer by IT Cosmetics.
After waiting a few minutes, I went to check on her to make sure she wasn't getting sick. But when I went up, she wasn't in the bathroom. She was in our room, sitting on our bed, wasted out of her mind, holding my baby. The second she saw me, she panicked and quickly stood up to give him to me. But as she was standing up, she lost balance. She fell and dropped my baby. He fell on the floor. I screamed and went to check up on him. Thankfully, he hadn't fallen from a notable height. He was crying, but seemed to have no major injuries or anything, which I thank my lucky stars for. My sister got up and started apologizing, and I just called my husband. I told him to hold our baby and dragged my sisters downstairs and outside to speak to her. I told her that I had one rule. Under no circumstance could she get near the baby while drunk. And while drunk, she decided to hold him, then dropped him. She kept apologizing, but I called her a taxi home saying I never wanted to speak to her again. That, however, turned out to be a mistake. Because as it turned out, she had done more than just dropped my baby. She had fed him the remainder of her wine bottle, and he was currently upstairs, throwing up, while I'm calling the hospital. The next few hours were a blur of panic. The ambulance took us to the emergency room, where doctors confirmed alcohol poisoning in my infant son. They ran tests to check for other complications while David and I paced the waiting room, terrified we might lose our baby because of my sister's reckless behavior. The medical staff worked efficiently, but their grave expressions did nothing to ease our fears as they monitored our son's vital signs and took blood samples. The hospital social worker interviewed us extensively, looking suspicious when we explained how our son had ingested alcohol. I could see in her eyes that she thought we might be covering something up. They started a mandatory child welfare investigation, making us feel like criminals when we were the victims. We had to answer the same questions repeatedly, describing the incident in excruciating detail while our baby received treatment in another room. I tried calling Megan repeatedly during this nightmare, but she wouldn't answer. Texts went unread, voicemails unheard. She had simply vanished after the ambulance took us away. David had made her leave our house, but we expected at least a call to check if Jackson was all right. Her complete disappearance only confirmed that deep down, she knew the gravity of what she'd done. After an agonizing night at the hospital, the doctors finally told us Jackson would be okay. There was no permanent damage detected, though they warned us that even small amounts of alcohol could potentially cause developmental issues that might not be immediately apparent. We'd need to monitor him closely and bring him for follow-up appointments. The relief nearly buckled my knees, and David and I clung to each other, sobbing with gratitude that our son had escaped serious harm. When we brought Jackson home the next day, I was filled with equal parts relief and rage. My sister had endangered my child's life and then disappeared without taking any responsibility. That afternoon, while Jackson napped under David's watchful eye, I drove to Megan's apartment, running on adrenaline and no sleep. My knuckles were white on the steering wheel as I rehearsed what I would say, determined to make her understand the consequences of her actions. I pounded on her door until her boyfriend Thomas answered, looking hungover and confused. He claimed Megan wasn't there and hadn't come home last night after visiting us. I showed him photos of Jackson in the hospital and explained what happened. The color drained from his face. His shock seemed genuine, suggesting Megan hadn't even told him what had transpired. She's been getting worse, he admitted, drinking more than ever. I've tried to help, but you make excuses for her. I finished his sentence. You're enabling her, and she almost killed my baby yesterday. The words came out sharp and clear, cutting through whatever defense he might have been preparing. He denied this, saying she'd been through tough times that I didn't understand. I lost it then, telling him exactly what I thought of both of them. Before leaving, I made it crystal clear. If either of them came near my family again, I'd have them arrested. His stammered apologies followed me down the hallway, but they meant nothing compared to my baby's safety. Back home, I found David holding Jackson, who was thankfully sleeping peacefully. We agreed immediately. My sister was permanently cut from our lives. We blocked her number, social media accounts, and email addresses. We installed a simple security camera at our front door. We documented everything that had happened for potential legal action if necessary. The decisions came easily. Our son's safety was non-negotiable. For a week, we focused solely on Jackson's recovery, taking turns monitoring him day and night. He seemed to be bouncing back well, showing no lasting effects from the ordeal. We were just starting to breathe easier when my phone exploded with messages from relatives. Megan had posted a tearful, clearly intoxicated video online claiming I was keeping her from her nephew out of spite. She described herself as a loving aunt who made one tiny mistake and was now being cruelly punished. The video had prompted a flood of family members to contact me, demanding to know why I was being so harsh to my clearly remorseful sister. Some even suggested I was using this incident as an excuse to continue our long-standing feud, as though protecting my child was merely a vindictive act. I couldn't believe it. She had endangered my child's life, disappeared for a week, and then tried to paint herself as the victim. When I attempted to privately message key family members with the truth, I discovered Megan had preemptively told them that I was exaggerating. Jackson had just accidentally sipped from her glass. Several relatives were now convinced I was overreacting to punish my sister. Their willingness to believe her version of events without even hearing mine was deeply painful, revealing fault lines in our family I hadn't fully appreciated before. Yesterday, we received a formal-looking letter from Megan claiming she'd entered rehab, and her therapist recommended family healing as part of her recovery process. She wanted visitation rights with Jackson once she completed the program. David suggested we verify this sudden rehabilitation, so I called the facility she named. It didn't exist. I'm sitting here now, looking at my beautiful baby boy sleeping in his crib, wondering how my own sister could first endanger his life, and then lie so blatantly to manipulate her way back into our lives. David wants to get a restraining order, but some family members are already calling us heartless for not giving her another chance. The division among our relatives has added another layer of stress to an already traumatic situation. Am I wrong to permanently cut my sister off after what she did? How do I protect my son from both her and the family members who seem blind to the danger she poses? I never imagined becoming a mother would mean defending my child from my own sister, but here we are. Every parenting book I read prepared me for sleepless nights and feeding challenges. None prepared me for having to shield my infant from someone who should have loved and protected him as family. The next day, I called Jordan, a friend who worked as a detective, who had helped us with some minor issues in the past. I needed advice about restraining orders and what evidence we'd need. He came over during his lunch break and reviewed everything we had so far. "Look, I'm going to be straight with you," Jordan said after looking at our documentation. "Getting a restraining order isn't impossible, but judges typically need more than one incident to establish a pattern of behavior." I showed him the fake rehab letter, the social media posts, and played the drunken video Megan had posted. His expression grew more serious with each piece of evidence. "Document everything," he advised. "Every text, every call, every social media post. Set up cameras if you can afford them. And most importantly, don't engage with her directly." After he left, I set up a separate email account against harassment. I forwarded all the messages from relatives, screenshots of her social media posts, and wrote a detailed account of what happened with Jackson while it was still fresh in my mind. David installed additional security cameras covering our backyard and driveway. That night, we got our first alert from the front door camera. I checked the footage expecting a package delivery or something innocent. Instead, I saw Megan stumbling up our walkway at 11:30 p.m., clearly intoxicated, with a bouquet of flowers and a teddy bear. She rang the doorbell repeatedly, then sat on our porch for nearly 20 minutes before leaving the items with a note. David went out to retrieve them when she was gone. The note read, "I'm so sorry for the misunderstanding. Please let me see my nephew. He needs his auntie in his life. Love, Meg." The flowers reeked of cigarette smoke and alcohol, like she'd brought them straight from a bar. I added this incident to our documentation file and threw everything in the trash.
Our daughter's going to college.
I know.
So great.
So what do we do now?
Wait, we've never done.
The fact that she'd come to our home drunk just proved she hadn't changed at all. The next morning, I called our pediatrician to warn them that Megan might try to access Jackson's medical records. They added a note to his file requiring additional verification for any information requests. Later that day, I received a call from the pediatrician's office. "Mrs. Mitchell, this is Stacy from Dr. Peterson's office. I wanted to let you know that someone claiming to be your sister called requesting copies of Jackson's records. Following your instructions, we declined to release any information." My blood ran cold. "Did she say why she wanted them?" "She said she was helping you gather documentation for a specialist consultation. When we asked for the authorization form you supposedly signed, she hung up." I thanked Stacy for the call and immediately contacted Jordan again. He said this strengthened our case but still wasn't quite enough for an emergency restraining order. He suggested we notify Jackson's future daycare about the situation. The following day, David and I visited Little Explorers Daycare where we'd planned to enroll Jackson when I returned to work. As we explained our situation to the manager, Karma, her expression shifted from professional politeness to concern. "Actually," she said hesitantly, "someone matching your sister's description was here yesterday, asking about enrollment procedures. She said she was thinking of registering her nephew and wanted to tour the facility." The realization that Megan was tracking our movements so closely made me physically ill. We showed Karma a photo of Megan and she confirmed it was the same person. We immediately decided against using that daycare and began researching home-based nanny options instead. That weekend, my mother called to invite us to Sunday dinner. "Dad and I miss you all so much," she said. "We promise Megan won't be there. We just want to see our grandson and talk through everything calmly." After discussing it with David, we cautiously agreed. This would be the first time my parents had seen Jackson since the incident, and despite everything, I didn't want to deprive them of a relationship with their grandson if Megan truly wouldn't be present. We arrived at my parents' house around 4 p.m. Mom greeted us with teary hugs, cooing over Jackson, who was awake and alert in his carrier. Dad gave David a firm handshake and kissed my cheek. Everything seemed normal as we settled in the living room, Jackson on a blanket for tummy time while Mom brought out coffee and cookies. Then I heard it, the unmistakable sound of my sister's laugh coming from the kitchen. My whole body tensed. "Who else is here?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Before Mom could respond, Megan walked in from the kitchen holding a glass of wine. "Surprise," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I thought we could finally talk things out. I didn't say a word. I simply picked up Jackson, grabbed the diaper bag, and walked straight to the door. I heard David behind me saying something to my parents about trust being broken, but I was already strapping Jackson into his car seat, my hands shaking with anger and betrayal. I drove home alone while David stayed behind to confront my parents about their deception. When he returned an hour later, his expression was grim. "They admitted they set up the whole thing," he said, pacing our living room. "They thought if they could just get us all in the same room, we'd talk it out, and everything would be fixed." "Did they say anything else?" "Yeah, and you're not going to like it. Megan's been living with them for the past 3 weeks. Apparently Thomas kicked her out after learning what she did to Jackson. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. My parents had lied to our faces while harboring the person who had endangered their own grandson. The depth of their betrayal was incomprehensible to me. I cried that night for the family I thought I had, while David held me and promised we'd get through this together. The next morning, I sent a simple text to my parents. "We need space from all of you right now. Please respect that." Then I blocked their numbers. David did the same. We needed time to process this betrayal and figure out our next steps without the constant pressure from my family. For a few days, things were quiet. We settled into a routine with Jackson, who was thriving despite everything. I focused on enjoying my maternity leave with him, trying to put the Megan situation out of my mind as much as possible. David returned to work, though he called to check in more frequently than before. On Thursday, I decided to venture out to the grocery store with Jackson. It was our first trip out together that wasn't a doctor's appointment, and I was feeling confident as a new mom. I put Jackson in his carrier, which I placed securely in the shopping cart, and began making my way through the store. I was in the produce section selecting apples when I felt that unmistakable sensation of being watched. I turned to see Megan at the end of the aisle, pretending to examine a display of oranges while clearly tracking my movements. When our eyes met, she quickly looked away, acting as if she hadn't seen me. My heart raced. This couldn't be a coincidence. This was our local store, far from my parents' house where she was staying. She must have followed me here. I abandoned my half-filled cart and headed straight for the exit, clutching Jackson's carrier tightly. In the parking lot, I scanned for Megan but didn't see her. I quickly secured Jackson in the car and drove home, checking my rearview mirror constantly. Once home, I had a full-blown panic attack, my first ever. I couldn't catch my breath, my heart was racing, and I was convinced Megan was going to appear at any moment. I called David at work, barely able to speak coherently. He came home immediately to find me still shaking, Jackson thankfully napping peacefully in his bassinet. "We need legal help," David said once I'd calmed down. "This is stalking." The next day, we consulted with Jordan again, who agreed we needed to pursue a restraining order more aggressively. He reviewed our documentation and explained our options. For a restraining order, we typically need evidence of threats or harassment, he explained. Following you in a grocery store is concerning, but difficult to prove as intentional harassment. Courts generally want to see a pattern of behavior that would make a reasonable person fear for their safety. "So there's nothing we can do?" David asked, frustration evident in his voice. "I didn't say that," Jordan replied. "Start documenting everything. Times, dates, locations. Set up more cameras. If she keeps showing up where you are, that builds our case. And don't respond to any contact attempts. That can be used against you to argue the contact was welcome." We left Jordan's office with a plan. We would document meticulously, avoid all contact, and build our case. It wasn't the immediate solution we wanted, but it was something. Over the next week, Megan escalated her attempts to contact us. She created new email addresses to bypass our blocks, sent daily messages about her recovery journey, and left voicemails asking for just 5 minutes with Jackson. Each message started sympathetically enough, but inevitably included subtle guilt trips and manipulative language. "I know you're just trying to protect Jackson," one voicemail said, "but do you really want him growing up without knowing his aunt who loves him so much? Don't you remember how much you loved spending time with Aunt Patty when we were kids?" I saved everything without responding. With each message, her tone gradually shifted from pleading to demanding, from "I understand why you're upset" to "you're being unreasonable, and you can't keep him from me forever." 2 weeks after the grocery store incident, our newly hired nanny, Jessica, reported something disturbing. While taking Jackson for a walk in the neighborhood, she noticed the same car circling the block 3 times. She couldn't identify the driver, but the behavior was concerning enough that she cut the walk short and returned to our house. "I'm probably being paranoid," Jessica said, "but with everything you've told me about your sister, I didn't want to take any chances." We thanked her for her vigilance and decided to invest in a GPS tracking device for the stroller. It felt ridiculous. What parent has to track their baby's stroller because of their own sibling? But we were taking no chances with Jackson's safety. The next day, I received a troubling call from Dakota, a mutual childhood friend who still had occasional contact with Megan. "I don't want to alarm you," Dakota said, "but Megan's been asking me some weird questions. She wanted to know what time you usually put the baby down for naps, and if you still keep a spare key under the planter like your parents used to." "What did you tell her?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Nothing. I told her I hadn't been to your new house and wouldn't know that stuff. She claimed she wanted to leave a special surprise for Jackson, but something felt off about it. I thought you should know." I thanked Dakota for the warning and immediately called a locksmith to change all our locks. We also changed our alarm codes and made sure every window was secured. That night, neither David nor I slept well, taking turns checking on Jackson and listening for any unusual sounds. Around 2 a.m., David nudged me awake. "There's a car parked across the street," he whispered. "It's been there for at least an hour." I peered through our bedroom blinds. Even in the darkness, I could make out the outline of Megan's distinctive hatchback. A fig
Stains are certain. So is the power of Tide, with 50% more cleaning power.
sat in the driver's seat just watching our house. David pulled on jeans and a sweatshirt. "I'm going out there. Be careful," I warned, already reaching for my phone in case I needed to call 911. I watched from the window as David approached the car. The headlights suddenly switched on, temporarily blinding him, but he continued forward. I could see him speaking to the driver, his posture tense and defensive. After a brief exchange, the car pulled away from the curb and drove off. "It was her," David confirmed when he returned. "She claimed she was just making sure we were safe. When I told her I was calling the police, she took off." The next morning, we took this new evidence to Jordan, who agreed we finally had enough for a temporary restraining order. We filed the paperwork that day, and the order was granted within hours. Megan was now legally prohibited from coming within 500 feet of us, our home, or Jackson's doctor's office. For about a week, the restraining order seemed to work. We didn't see Megan's car, receive any messages from unknown accounts, or notice anyone following us. We began to relax slightly, thinking perhaps the legal action had finally gotten through to her. Then I discovered something horrifying. While checking Instagram one evening, a blog account using photos of Jackson. The account was called Auntie's Adventures and featured dozens of my Facebook photos of Jackson with captions like, "My precious nephew growing so fast," and "Can't wait for our next cuddle session." I dug deeper and found 3 more fake accounts across different platforms, all using stolen photos of my son and pretending to have a relationship with him. One even included fabricated stories about babysitting adventures and special auntie and nephew moments that never happened. I spent hours reporting these accounts and adjusting our privacy settings to lock down all our personal information. David contacted Jordan about this new development, but since Megan hadn't directly contacted us or approached us physically, the fake accounts didn't technically violate the restraining order. The stress was taking a toll on both of us. David suggested we start therapy to help deal with the constant anxiety and hypervigilance we were living with. We found a therapist specializing in family trauma and scheduled our first session for the following week. During that first therapy session with Dr. William, we took turns explaining the situation, from the initial incident with Jackson to the ongoing stalking behavior. Dr. William was validating and supportive, helping us understand that our reactions were normal given the circumstances. Halfway through the session, David's phone rang. He apologized and moved to silence it, but then saw it was our neighbor calling. He answered, listened for a moment, then his face went pale. "We need to go," he said, already standing. Someone broke into our house. We rushed home to find 2 police officers in our driveway. Our neighbor had called 911 after noticing our side door standing open. The officers had cleared the house and found no one inside, but invited us to check if anything was missing. Everything in the living room and kitchen appeared untouched. Our electronics, jewelry, and other valuables were all in place. But when we reached Jackson's nursery, I stopped dead in my tracks. On the changing table sat a large gift basket wrapped in cellophane with a pink bow. Inside were baby clothes, toys, and a card signed, "With love from Auntie Megan." But something was wrong. I approached the basket cautiously and detected a strong smell of wine. When David carefully unwrapped it, we discovered all the baby clothes were soaked in red wine. The card inside read, "Since you won't let me see him, I thought I'd send something for him to remember me by. Blood is thicker than water, but wine leaves a stronger stain." The police documented everything and took the basket as evidence. They explained that since nothing was damaged or stolen, and Megan had left before they arrived, they could only add this to our case file. The officer suggested we consider installing more security cameras and perhaps getting a dog as an additional deterrent. After they left, David and I sat on the couch in stunned silence. The violation of our home, specifically our baby's room, left me feeling violated and terrified. The wine-soaked clothes were a clear reference to the original incident and showed that Megan not only felt no remorse, but was actively taunting us about it. "We can't stay here," I finally said. "She knows where we live, she can get in anytime she wants, and the police can't do anything until after she's already done something." David agreed. "My parents have been asking us to visit. Maybe we could go stay with them for a while. They live in Lakeside. She wouldn't think to look for us there." The next day, we packed essentials for an extended stay, installed additional security cameras that would send alerts to our phones, and drove to David's parents' house in Lakeside. We didn't tell anyone where we were going, not even our close friends, fearing the information might somehow get back to Megan. David's parents, Michael and Barbara, welcomed us warmly, converting their home office into a temporary nursery for Jackson. They were horrified by our situation and promised to help however they could. Their house was in a quiet, gated community with good security, which gave us some peace of mind. For the first 3 days at his parents' house, I finally relaxed enough to sleep through the night. Being away from our home and the constant fear of Megan appearing gave me space to breathe. Jackson seemed to sense the change in atmosphere too. He was smiling more and fussing less. On the 4th day, my phone chimed with a text from an unknown number. "Nice place. The garden looks peaceful." My blood ran cold. I showed David the message, and he immediately went outside to scan the neighborhood. There was no sign of Megan, but the message was clear. She had somehow found us again. Michael, David's father, was a retired security specialist who had worked for various corporations. When we showed him the text, he immediately went into professional mode, helping us secure the house further and coaching us on safety protocols. "No established routines," he advised. "Vary your schedules, the times you come and go, different routes if you drive anywhere, and absolutely no social media updates, not even private ones." We followed his advice religiously, but Megan still managed to extend her reach. She somehow obtained David's parents' phone numbers and began calling them with elaborate stories about me keeping her from her only nephew. When that didn't work, she moved on to his extended family, forcing us to have uncomfortable conversations with aunts, uncles, and cousins, explaining why a woman they'd never met was contacting them about our baby. Meanwhile, the court date for our permanent restraining order was approaching. We gathered all our evidence, the hospital records, police reports, photographs of the wine-soaked baby clothes, records of the fake social media accounts, and statements from witnesses like Dakota and Jessica. Jordan was confident we had a strong case. The day before the hearing, we received notice that Megan had hired her own attorney, a surprisingly high-profile lawyer known for aggressive tactics. How she afforded him, I had no idea, but his involvement raised the stakes significantly. In court, I presented our case as calmly and factually as I could, despite my nerves. I detailed how Megan had endangered Jackson by giving him alcohol, her subsequent stalking behavior, the break-in, and the ongoing harassment. Our documentation was thorough and well-organized, thanks to my obsessive record-keeping over the past weeks. Then Megan's lawyer stood up. He portrayed her as a struggling alcoholic who had made one terrible mistake and was being unfairly punished while trying to recover. He claimed I had a history of exaggerating Megan's behavior due to childhood jealousy, and that I was using this incident to permanently cut her off from family connections she desperately needed for her recovery. My client has enrolled in rehabilitation, Your Honor, he said smoothly. She acknowledges her grave error in judgment but is actively seeking help. Permanently severing family ties through this order would be detrimental to her recovery and denies the possibility of supervised reconciliation in the future. The judge asked several pointed questions of both sides, then announced he would take a 30-day continuance to review all evidence before making a final decision. In the meantime, the temporary restraining order would remain in effect. We left the courthouse feeling deflated. We'd hoped for immediate resolution, but now faced another month of uncertainty. As we walked to our car, I spotted my mother standing near the courthouse steps. She approached cautiously, looking thinner and more tired than I remembered. "Can we talk?" she asked. "Just for a minute." David
Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Jake from State Farm, everybody.
squeezed my hand but stepped away to give us privacy. I crossed my arms defensively, not ready to forgive her betrayal. "Megan told us she's having suicidal thoughts," my mother said without preamble. "She says being cut off from family is killing her. Can't you drop this restraining order and let us work together as a family to help her?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Mom, she gave alcohol to my infant son. She broke into our house. She's stalking us. And you want me to just forgive and forget because she says she's suicidal?" My mother looked down. "We're just trying to help both our daughters. Is that so wrong? How did she find us at David's parents' house?" I asked suddenly, a suspicion forming. My mother's guilty expression confirmed my fears before she spoke. "I might have mentioned where you were staying. I didn't think it was a secret." The betrayal hit me all over again. My own mother had compromised our safety, all while trying to guilt me into dropping protections for my child. I took a deep breath, fighting back tears. "We're done here," I said quietly. "Don't contact us again until you decide which daughter's well-being you actually care about." I walked away, joining David at the car. As we drove back to his parents' house, I explained what had happened. We decided it was time to cut contact with my parents as well, at least temporarily. They had proven they couldn't be trusted with even basic information about our whereabouts. That evening, David's mother handed me a sealed envelope that had been dropped off while we were at court. "A young man delivered this," she explained. "He said it was important." Inside was a handwritten letter from Thomas, Megan's ex-boyfriend. He explained that he'd broken up with her after witnessing her obsession firsthand and wanted to warn us about her deteriorating mental state. "She talks about rescuing your baby all the time," he wrote. "She's drinking heavily again and has a whole wall covered with photos of him printed from your old social media. I'm truly scared for what she might do and thought you should know." We immediately provided this information to Jordan and the police, who finally began taking our concerns more seriously. Jordan filed an addendum to our restraining order request, including Thomas's letter as new evidence. The night before our rescheduled court date, the security system at David's parents' house triggered an alert. The cameras captured Megan attempting to enter the backyard by scaling the fence. The alarm had activated automatically, sending her running before she could get fully over the fence. The footage clearly showed her face, giving us fresh, undeniable evidence of her violating the temporary order. In court the next morning, the judge reviewed both the original evidence and the new developments. This time, Megan appeared surprisingly composed. She wore a conservative dress, minimal makeup, and kept her eyes downcast in an appearance of contrition. Her attorney presented a new narrative. Megan had recognized her problems and was actively seeking treatment for alcohol addiction. He submitted paperwork from a treatment facility as evidence of her commitment to change. When given my chance to speak, I delivered an emotional but fact-based account of everything that had happened. I explained that while I wished my sister well in any genuine recovery effort, her repeated violations of boundaries and the escalating nature of her behavior made me fear for my family's safety. Your Honor, I said, my voice catching despite my best efforts. I wake up every night checking that my baby is still breathing in his crib. I can't go to the grocery store without looking over my shoulder. My sister gave alcohol to my infant, broke into our home, and has now followed us to a different punishment. It's about protection. The judge considered all the evidence, particularly the recent security footage showing Megan's attempt to enter David's parents' property. He granted the permanent restraining order immediately, ordering Megan to stay at least 1,000 feet away from me, David, Jackson, and any residence or workplace associated with us for a period of 3 years. We felt momentary relief as we left the courthouse, but it was short-lived. Within hours, Megan violated the order by sending an email from a new address. No piece of paper will keep me from what's mine. Blood doesn't smudge away with a judge's signature. We forwarded it immediately to the police in Jordan, who advised us that this violation could result in her arrest. Officers went to Megan's last known address to serve the restraining order and potentially arrest her for the immediate violation, but discovered she had vacated her apartment days earlier. What they found there was disturbing. According to the officer who called us, her apartment was filled with empty liquor bottles and a wall covered with printed photos of Jackson, some taken from social media, others clearly photographed through windows or from a distance. There were also maps with our routines noted, including Jackson's usual nap times, and when David typically left for work. An alert was issued for Megan's apprehension, which only intensified our fear. Not knowing where she was or when she might appear next meant we couldn't let our guard down for a moment. We decided to remain at David's parents' house rather than return home, feeling at least somewhat safer with the gated community and additional security measures. 3 tense days passed with no sign of Megan. We began to hope that perhaps she'd left the area entirely, seeking a fresh start somewhere else. David even ventured back to our house briefly to collect more of our belongings, reporting that everything seemed untouched since we'd left. On the 4th day, Jessica took Jackson to the community park within the gated neighborhood. David's mother went along, giving me my first hour alone in weeks.
New Swiffer Mop Dukes. New locking head, getting into tight spaces is simple.
At 54, my skin is a lot more prone to redness than it used to be, but True Match Super Blendable Foundation is here to help. It gives a second skin finish that locks in hydration with 47 different shades to find your perfect match. Transform your skin with True Match Foundation.
I used the time to shower and actually blow dry my hair. Small acts of self-care that had become luxuries in our constant state of vigilance. My phone rang just as I was finishing. It was Jessica, her voice tight with controlled panic. I think I just saw your sister, she said quietly. There's a woman who's been following us around the park for the last 20 minutes. She's keeping her distance, but I recognize her from the photos you showed me. My heart raced. Where are you now? Near the playground. Your mother-in-law is with Jackson on the swings. I stepped away to call you. Stay with them, I instructed. David will be there in 2 minutes. I'm calling the police. I hung up and immediately called David, who was working in his father's home office. He ran out the door without even ending the call. Then I dialed 911, explaining the situation and the active restraining order. They promised to dispatch officers immediately. Through the living room window, I saw David's car screeching out of the driveway. I paced anxiously, waiting for news. 5 minutes later, though it felt like hours, David called back. We've got Jackson, he said breathless. We're coming home now. Jessica definitely saw Megan. She tried to run when I showed up, but the security guard stopped her at the gate. Police are taking her into custody now. I collapsed onto the couch in relief. When they arrived home minutes later, I clutched Jackson to my chest, breathing in his baby scent and letting tears flow freely. For the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to believe we might actually be safe. Later that evening, an officer called to confirm that Megan had been arrested for violating the restraining order. She would be held pending a bail hearing, and given her history of violations, there was a good chance she would remain in custody, at least temporarily. We thanked the officers profusely for their quick response. That night, I slept deeply for the first time in what felt like months, with Jackson's bassinet pulled close to our bed, and the knowledge that, at least for now, Megan couldn't reach us. The next morning, we began serious discussions about our long-term plans. Did we want to return to our home eventually? Should we consider moving to a different city? How would we handle family events in the future, knowing my parents couldn't be trusted to maintain boundaries? We had more questions than answers, but one thing was clear. Our lives had been fundamentally changed by Megan's actions, and we would never again take our family's safety for granted. Whatever came next, whether Megan remained in custody or was released, we would face it together, with our son's well-being as our only priority. Do you think she'll ever understand what she did? I asked David as we sat on his parents' porch that evening, watching the sunset while Jackson napped inside. I don't know, he answered honestly, but I do know it's not our job to help her understand. Our job is to protect our son, and that's exactly what we're going to do. I nodded, leaning against his shoulder. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time since that horrible day when Megan had given alcohol to our baby, I felt like we might actually find our way through this nightmare. The bail hearing was set for the next morning, and David insisted on attending to make sure the judge understood the severity of the situation. His mom offered to stay with me and Jackson, which was a relief since I wasn't mentally ready to face Megan again so soon. When David returned a few hours later, his expression was a mix of relief and concern. She got bail, he said, dropping onto the couch beside me. But there are conditions. She has to wear an ankle monitor to track her movements, submit to weekly drug and alcohol testing, and stay at least 1,000 feet from us at all times. How did she seem? I asked, bouncing Jackson gently on my knee. Oddly calm. Her lawyer did most of the talking. She just sat there staring straight ahead. The only time she showed any emotion was when they mentioned the alcohol monitoring. She actually argued with her lawyer about it. That didn't surprise me. Even with everything at stake, alcohol was still her priority. We decided to remain at David's parents' house a while longer, not quite trusting the monitoring system to keep us safe. Jackson seemed happy enough with the arrangement, thriving under the additional attention from his grandparents. 2 weeks later, we received a call from Jordan. He'd been keeping tabs on Megan's case and had news. They did a full substance abuse evaluation as part of her bail conditions, he explained. The assessment revealed more than just alcoholism. The psychologist found concerning personality disorder traits that might explain her fixation on your son. What does that mean for us? I asked. The court has ordered her to undergo dual treatment, both for alcohol and for her mental health issues. It's actually a good thing. She'll get more comprehensive monitoring than just for the drinking. I felt a strange mix of emotions at this news. On one hand, it was validating to hear professionals confirm what we'd suspected, that Megan's issues went deeper than just alcohol. On the other hand, a diagnosis didn't undo the trauma she'd caused or guarantee she'd actually improve. About a month into Megan's court-mandated treatment, we received a formal letter from her therapist. They were requesting a supervised family session as part of her treatment plan. The letter emphasized that our participation was entirely voluntary and would only occur in a controlled, therapeutic environment. David and I discussed it with our own therapist, Dr. William, who we'd continued seeing through video sessions. I'd advise against it at this early stage, he said. Megan needs to show sustained progress in her individual therapy before family involvement would be beneficial. And even then, I'd recommend starting with just you two adults, not including Jackson. We sent a polite but firm response declining the invitation, explaining that we weren't ready for direct contact. To our surprise, the therapist responded with understanding, saying they would continue working with Megan individually and might reach out again in the future if appropriate. Around this time, my parents made another attempt at reconciliation. My father called David's cell phone, knowing I probably wouldn't answer if they tried me directly. "Please just listen," Dad said when David reluctantly put him on speaker. "Your mother and I have been doing a lot of thinking. We spoke with Megan's doctors too. We understand now that we've been enabling her behavior for years, making excuses instead of holding her accountable." "That's great, but it's a little late," I replied, not bothering to hide the bitterness in my voice. "We know," Mom chimed in, apparently also on the call. "We failed both our daughters. We failed you by not protecting you from her behavior, and we failed her by not getting her help sooner. But she is truly changing this time. The doctors say her progress is remarkable." I sighed, exhausted by the cycle of hope and disappointment. Even if that's true, protecting Jackson comes before anyone's feelings, including yours, including hers, and including mine. There was silence on the other's voice, softer now. "We understand that. For the first time, I think we really do." I didn't make any promises, but I did agree to let them continue receiving updates about Jackson through email and photos. It was a small concession that cost me nothing but might help rebuild some kind of relationship eventually. Still, I made it clear that any information shared with Megan would result in immediate cutting of communication again. 6 months passed with relative calm. According to reports from her treatment facility, Megan was complying with all requirements. She attended therapy sessions, maintained sobriety, verified by testing, and hadn't violated the restraining order or monitoring conditions. We gradually settled into a new normal, eventually returning to our own home after installing a comprehensive security system that would make a bank vault jealous. Then a formally worded letter arrived, delivered through her therapist as allowed by the court. In it, Megan acknowledged her actions without excuses or manipulation. She expressed remorse for endangering Jackson and for the subsequent stalking behavior. She didn't ask for forgiveness or access to Jackson, just acknowledged the harm she had caused and her commitment to recovery. I read it several times, analyzing every word for hidden manipulation or guilt trips. Finding none, I showed it to David. "What do you think?" he asked. "I don't know," I admitted. "It seems genuine, but we've been fooled before. I'm not ready to respond, but I won't throw it away either." We decided to acknowledge receipt of the letter through her therapist, but maintained our position that direct contact wasn't currently on the table. The therapist continued sending occasional updates, all indicating significant improvements in both Megan's sobriety and understanding of boundaries. I remained cautious, insisting on concrete evidence of change. Over an extended period before considering any kind of reconciliation, we agreed to receive updates but refused direct contact until she demonstrated at least 1 year of stability. It was a hard line, but one David fully supported. Some family members called us stubborn, but they hadn't lived through what we had. 14 months after Megan's arrest, her therapist reached out again, proposing a carefully controlled meeting in their office. The idea sent me into all evidence of Megan's progress. The thought of facing her brought back all the fear and trauma. David suggested a compromise. "What about a video session first? That way we could disconnect immediately if things went south." It seemed like a reasonable middle ground. We scheduled the session for the following week, with her therapist moderating and our therapist doctor, William, joining to support us. When Megan's face appeared on the screen, I was struck by how different she looked. Her complexion was clearer, her eyes brighter and more focused. The slightly bloated appearance that comes with heavy drinking was gone. She seemed genuinely transformed. "Thank you for agreeing to this," she began. "I know it couldn't have been an easy decision." For the next hour, she spoke candidly about her recovery journey. She acknowledged the harm she'd caused without excuses, taking full responsibility for her actions. She talked about the work she'd done to understand the roots of her alcoholism and her unhealthy fixation on Jackson. "I was trying to fill an emptiness inside me," she explained. "When you got pregnant, I convinced myself being an aunt would give me purpose. Then when you rightfully kept me away after what I did, that obsession just grew. I listened silently, monitoring my own emotional reactions while trying to assess her sincerity. I hope someday I can be an aunt to Jackson in whatever capacity you deem appropriate, she said toward the end of the session. But I understand that may never happen, and that's a consequence of my actions that I have to accept. That comment triggered my protective instincts. I appreciate your progress, I said carefully, but I need to be very clear. Access to my child is not on the table in any foreseeable future. Any relationship we might rebuild would be between us as sisters only. To my surprise, she nodded without argument. I understand completely. That's a totally reasonable boundary. After several more video sessions over the course of 2 months, we cautiously agreed to an in-person meeting at her therapist's office. When Megan arrived, she was carrying a gift bag. "This is for Jackson," she said, holding it out. I immediately stiffened, thinking of the wine-soaked clothes from before. "We discussed no gifts," I reminded her.
How do you nourish a cat for a lifetime? Purina Cat Chow. Chow, 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 chow. Purina Cat Chow. Trust.
Right. I'm sorry. She set the bag aside without protest. Old habits. I should have respected that boundary. The fact that she accepted this correction without defensiveness was actually more convincing than any apology could have been. Throughout the session, she remained focused on making amends to me and David, rather than trying to establish any connection to Jackson. When my parents learned we were having these meetings, they immediately started pressuring us to accelerate the reconciliation process. "It's been almost 2 years, my mother argued during a phone call. "Megan's done everything the courts and doctors have asked. Don't you think it's time to be a family again?" "No," I said firmly. "Rebuilding trust takes years, not months. The fact that you're trying to rush this shows you still don't fully understand the situation." That shut down the conversation quickly. Over time, my parents learned that pushing only resulted in us pulling back further. They eventually accepted our timeline, even if they didn't fully understand it. By the 2-year mark of Megan's recovery, we had established a cautious, distant relationship. She attended occasional family gatherings where Jackson was present, but under strict conditions. She remained completely sober and was never alone with him. She accepted these limitations without complaint, seeming to understand they were the natural consequences of her past actions. Meanwhile, I continued my own therapy, working through the trauma and hypervigilance that still affected me. I jumped at unexpected noises and still checked the locks multiple times each night. I struggled with anxiety whenever Megan was in the same room as Jackson, watching her every movement like a hawk. Dr. William assured me these reactions were normal given what we'd experienced and would likely ease with time and continued safety. "You're not obligated to trust someone who has given you reason not to," he reminded me. "Trust is earned, not owed." That perspective helped me navigate the complicated feelings that arose as Megan continued to demonstrate change. I was learning to trust my instincts while allowing for the possibility of measured reconciliation. When Jackson turned 4, we held a small birthday party at a local park. Family and a few friends attended, including Megan, who now had nearly 3 years of sobriety. She brought a modest gift that she first showed to me for approval, a picture book about dinosaurs, Jackson's current obsession. During the party, I noticed Megan step away from the group, sitting alone on a bench at the edge of the playground. I hesitated, then decided to join her. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Just taking a moment," she said. "These gatherings can still be triggering sometimes. Being around people who are drinking, I hadn't even thought about that. Several adults were having beer or wine with the pizza. Do you need to leave? We'd understand." She shook her head. "No, I've got coping strategies now. I wanted to tell you something, actually. Today marks 3 years sober for me." "Congratulations," I said, genuinely impressed by the milestone. "I don't want to make a big deal about it," she continued. "It's not why I mentioned it. I just wanted to thank you." "Thank me? For what?" "For maintaining your boundaries. If you had given in when I was manipulating everyone, if you had allowed me back into your life easily, I probably wouldn't have gotten the help I needed. Your refusal to accept my behavior forced me to actually confront my issues." I didn't know what to say to that. After a moment, I simply nodded and said, "I'm glad you're doing better." As I walked back to the party, I realized we had found a new equilibrium. Not the close sisterhood I might have dreamed of as a child, but a carefully managed relationship built on hard-earned respect. Jackson's safety and well-being remained the non-negotiable priority, but there was room now for cautious interaction. Last week, Megan celebrated 4 years of sobriety. She moved to a neighboring town for a job in addiction counseling, using her experience to help others. She maintains appropriate boundaries, always checking before sending gifts for Jackson's birthdays and holidays. She never asks for unsupervised time with him and respects our parenting decisions without question. Sometimes I catch myself watching her interact with Jackson during family gatherings, him showing her his latest Lego creation, her responding with appropriate interest. In a complex mix of emotions, lingering wariness, sadness for what might have been in a different reality, but also a measured appreciation for the work she's done to change. Jackson knows a simplified version of our history. We explained that Auntie Megan was very sick when he was a baby and made some bad choices that meant she couldn't see him for a long time. He accepts this with the straightforward logic of children, neither particularly attached to her nor afraid of her. As for me, I've come to accept that some wounds never fully heal. I doubt I'll ever completely relax when Megan is around Jackson. I'll probably always have that instinctive urge to move closer when she interacts with him, but the acute fear has subsided, replaced by a vigilant caution that feels manageable. David and I recently discussed having another child. The conversation brought up unexpected anxiety for me. Memories of those terrifying days with Jackson flooded back, but David gently reminded me that we're not the same people we were then. We're stronger, more prepared, with boundaries firmly in place. We can't let fear of what happened in the past stop us from building our future, he said, holding my hand across the kitchen table. He's right, of course. The best revenge against trauma is to not let it control your life forever. We're moving forward cautiously, but deliberately, holding our boundaries firm while allowing for the possibility of growth and change. I still have the letter Megan sent from treatment all those years ago. I keep it as a reminder of how far we've all come, but also as evidence should we ever need it again. Trust, once broken, is never quite the same, but life continues, and families evolve. Ours certainly looks different than I ever imagined, shaped by crisis and painful reckonings, but ultimately stronger for storm. Sometimes people ask if I've forgiven my sister.
First thing.
Complicated question without a simple answer. I've accepted the relationship as it exists now. I've acknowledged her work toward change, but forgiveness implies forgetting. And as a mother,
FanDuel Casino is the only place where you can play Huff and Even More Puff. So get...
I overheard my wife drunkenly laughing with her friends. He's too stupid to realize I've been cheating for years. They all roared with laughter. I didn't say a word. But when she showed up crying at my door, she got a surprise she never expected. I, 33M, never thought I'd be that guy posting on this sub, but here I am. Buckle up, because this is going to be a wild ride. So here's the thing. Last weekend, I was supposed to be on an overnight trip with the boys to watch the game 2 states over. Been planning it for months. But Daryl's kid got... So we had to cancel. NBD, shit happens. I figured I'd surprise Heather, 32F, my wife of 8 years, by coming home early. Yeah, I know how that usually goes in these stories, but trust me, what happened next was somehow worse than walking in on her with another dude. As I pulled into our driveway around 9 p.m., I noticed several cars parked outside, recognized Michelle's Subaru and Kathleen's Honda right away. Heather had mentioned having the girls over while I was gone, so this checked out. I was about to walk in the front door when I heard them all on our back deck through the side gate. They were being loud. Wine drunk loud. I was going to head around back to say hi when I heard my name, so I paused. Call it instinct, whatever. Griffin is just so... I can't even... Heather was slurring her words slightly. The girls all giggled. OMG, I still can't believe you've kept this going so long, Michelle's voice. He's too stupid to realize I've been cheating for years. Heather practically shouted it. They all roared with laughter. I literally froze mid-step, like my brain just stopped working for a sec. Sutton's been the best decision I ever made, Heather continued. Last week, while Griffin was working late, Sutton came over and we did it right on the couch where Griffin takes his precious naps. More cackling laughter. No, the sacred nap couch, Kathleen shrieked like this was the funniest thing ever. You should have seen how sweet Griffin was the next day, making me breakfast. If he only knew what his precious wife had been doing the night before. My stomach dropped to my feet. I felt like I'd been punched. That breakfast. I'd made her favorite avocado toast and those fancy eggs she likes. Brought her coffee in bed. Told her I loved her. I don't know how long I stood there listening to them swap stories. My whole body was shaking. I learned that my business trips were her favorite times to have Sutton over. That they'd been sleeping together for over 3 fucking years. That she'd even been with him the weekend of my dad's funeral when she claimed she had food poisoning and couldn't attend. I didn't confront them. Didn't make a scene, just silently walked back to my car, drove to a nearby Target parking lot, and sat there until I could breathe again. I must have looked insane. A grown man hyperventilating in his car at 10 p.m. on a Saturday. Once I could think straight-ish, I called Daryl. Thank God his kid was feeling better and he picked up. Dude, my whole life just imploded. I told him everything. Don't go home tonight, he said. Come crash here, we'll figure this out. At Daryl's place, I paced the living room for hours while he Googled divorce lawyers. My mind kept replaying all these moments from the past few years that suddenly made sense. The girls' trips, where she came back with barely any photos. How she'd started keeping her phone face down. The unexplained charges at hotels, less than 30 miles from our house. All those nights she was showing houses to clients after normal business hours. I felt like the biggest fool on the planet. Around 3 a.m., from Heather. Girls are crashed here. Hope are having fun with the boys. Love you. I nearly threw my phone against the wall. The audacity. You need to be smart about this, Daryl said, taking my phone. Don't tip her off. Not yet. The next morning, I pretended everything was normal. Told her I'd crashed at Daryl's after drinking too much. She bought it completely. Even had the nerve to complain about having to clean up after the girls while nursing her hangover. Over the next week, I went into reconnaissance mode. When she was in the shower, I checked her phone. Thousands of texts with Sutton client going